Welcome to the Big Jon Bass Show. Welcome to the Big Jon Bass Show.
Hello, legends, and welcome to the Big Jon Bass Show. I'm your host, Big Jon Bass. It's actually sunny in the UK. Spurs are back this weekend, and I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good about life. I went to the seaside at the weekend. I went down to the Kent coast, Ramsgate, Margate, all around there. Basically walked about a bit, which was quite nice. We went, got the train into, I don't know if anyone even knows where these places are, for anyone who's listening in America, basically seaside towns. And you can get the train from London. You can get the train in an hour from where I live, which is quite nice. And then, you get out to the coast and you can walk. And it's like, I think it's 8, maybe 9 miles around the coast. And it was really nice. Stopped off for a bit of food. It was lovely. And the weather was all right, but it's even better now. If you can see, if you're watching this on Spotify, if you're watching it on YouTube, I've got a bit of colour in my face. I actually picked up a bit of a tan in England, which is shocking, I know, but true nonetheless. Welcome back. I know last time we spoke, it was quite a controversial. Well, I was going to say it was quite a controversial episode. I don't think the episode was controversial at all. That week on social media was controversial, and there was lots of controversy surrounding Spurs and De Zerbi. Want to take a moment just to thank everyone who actually listened to the episode last week before commenting or reaching out to me, because the reason that I wanted to talk about the subject on here is it's much easier to explain what I think is quite a nuanced position that I have, which is, it's just basically that I actually do understand all the different viewpoints that people have on this topic, and I don't think there is a wrong or right position. I can understand all positions. And so it was just easier to explain it on here. So thanks for taking, I know you guys rock with me anyway and will listen to the podcast normally, but for those of you who for the first time listened to that episode, or, wanted to listen to it before you kind of commented on anything, I do actually really appreciate that, because it's, for me, it's much easier to talk than it is to type, which is why my Twitter is just mainly very short opinion pieces. Because, or like my opinion on something small in a game, or just stupid memes, because it's not my best medium, the written form, to get sort of complicated, difficult, tricky subjects out. So thanks for taking the time to listen to it. If you haven't and you wanted to hear my position on everything De Zerbi related, please feel free to go back and listen to it. But I want this episode to, I think that hopefully last week did cover that in enough detail. And if you listen to the episode, you'll know that I am now ready to sort of just move on and talk about football. And I don't want to go into those sort of subjects anymore. I'm not really going to reference them even. I just want to now focus on Spurs and on the team and how we get out of this relegation zone. But thank you for all those people who commented and just, appreciated the episode and appreciated the way I tried to explain my position. So thanks for taking the time, because as you can imagine, I got a lot of weird messages from people who hadn't even listened to the episode, or had listened and had basically suggested that I was saying something completely different. So that was a bit odd. So I appreciate everyone taking the time to listen. Before we get into the episode as well, if you listen to this every week and you don't already subscribe and have this podcast on auto download, can you please do that? Because loads of you listen to this every week, right? But the amount of people who've subscribed is less than the amount of people who listen every week. And it's like consistently every week. So what are you doing? You're here every week, but you haven't subscribed. Can you go and click the subscribe button wherever you're listening to this, please, so that you don't miss any episodes? Because I am planning on ramping this bad boy up and adding a few more episodes, possibly going to 2 a week. If I can get enough of you to subscribe, I will do 2 episodes a week, because I know you cheeky little boys and girls want a few more episodes from me. So if I can get some more people, if I can get the same amount of people that listen every week to subscribe, that will help. So please go and do that. Right, let's get into it. I want to, like I said, I want to focus on the football now. And I, in classic me form, I'm just getting very excited by this. And even last week, when I was talking about the football, I was giving you a lot of the reasons why I think this is still a risk, right? That De Zerbi doesn't just come in and fix everything. And I still think there's obviously a risk. There's a risk with every manager. And I do have my concerns that, like, could he implement his style quick enough? And, are the players just bums, right? Are they can't respond to anyone? But now I'm in a position, and as we edge closer to the weekend and the Sunderland game, I'm now looking at it the other way around, which is like, okay, well, let's assume that he can do those things. Right, like, what does that actually look like? Because for me, it's a case of, okay, well, maybe he can implement it quick. And if he can, then suddenly it makes me feel a lot more confident, right? It makes me feel like, okay, this Sunderland game is going to be super interesting because we could actually just get the new manager bounce because his ideas and his influence does take hold quite quickly. And that puts us in a really good position to start picking up some points. And why not start against Sunderland? I should have mentioned at the start of this pod, well, I did mention it was hot, but I am now going to mention that expected goals this week, and actually all episodes where weather's nice, is going to be higher, isn't it? So there's 2 expected goals already. So I think we're in for a record XG on this pod. But what's led me to think about this? So I've obviously listened to, all the other pods out and about. Fighting Cock, obviously, number 1. But all the other pods that I listen to on Spurs, and everyone's been talking about this sort of first training session. And I think, everyone said a lot of really good stuff about what's been happening with this training session and the way that the club have got us all, hopefully, all of us excited about what's happening with the players. But my 2 cents with it is, and again, like, I'm now in this sort of new optimistic view of like, right, let's get behind the team. Let's get behind what De Zerbi's going to try to do on the pitch. Let's really focus on what's happening. And when I do think about it, I do kind of feel like, yes, it will obviously be complicated for the players to understand the exact automations and like the exact things he wants. But the environment that he's setting of moving the ball quickly and taking less touches when we're on the break and moving forward at pace, and there was a lot of talk about moving off the ball, essentially is how I took it. He didn't phrase it like that, but essentially it was like making yourself available. And that to me has been a massive bugbear. I went to the Palace game at home and we lost. Van der Ven got himself sent off. And the one thing that really struck me in that game, even before we were down to 10, was just the lack of movement off the ball. When players were receiving the ball, there was just so little options. We were so static. And that's been a big issue for me for a while, is like, we don't move the ball quickly and there's just really no movement, and players just aren't prepared to just step into a space so that a player can play it through the gap or through the lines. And so, yeah, it looks like we don't have any players who can make passes, but it's equally about players who aren't making movement for them to make those passes. And I think that has been a big issue for us. And it was really interesting that he was talking about exactly that, right? That you need to be able to be brave and give availability to players. So my sort of early impressions of what he's trying to do is pretty positive, actually. Like, I'm kind of looking at it thinking, yeah, okay, if he can get these players galvanized around this idea of like being braver on the ball, making runs and movement for, the opportunity to receive the ball more often, that immediately, I think, 1, should make players play better, but 2, as a player, I think you'd be kind of enjoying that, right? And like I said, his very detailed instructions will probably come later, but these initial sessions are about, we can play in the sort of way that is dependent on how the opposition are pressing us. So if they're not pressing us and we've just got the ball, let's slow the game down. And then when they come and press us quickly, we have to be able to react to that and move quickly. That to me is a really important element that I think is a big departure from, say, an Ange system, which was just all action all the time, which I think led to a ton of injuries. And we saw that with a lot of muscle injuries. Whereas in this system, it's like it's sort of, again, environment or moments in the game dependent, which could be really interesting from a like the footballing side could be really good to watch, but it also means it could be sustainable because we're not having to do that for 90 plus minutes. So I think that's really interesting. So that's my sort of early impressions is seeing this sort of first training session. I also like the fact that he's like getting round to players and like getting in players' ears. One of my concerns was, maybe he's a disciplinarian again. Maybe he's too emotional. And again, all of these things could come to bear fruit later down the line. But right now, first impressions, it does seem like the players are like engaged and kind of excited to have a hands-on coach who's going to sort of like talk them through stuff rather than, sort of spreadsheet manager like Thomas Frank. And I know that sounds harsh because, he's obviously done really well in his career prior to this. And what do I know? I'm being flippant, aren't I? Because he was crap. He was crap for us. And he is everything that I don't like about football management. So I'm just going to lash out. Okay. So yeah, I think that's interesting. And I think that he's obviously got a sort of level of energy and respect that the players clearly buying into, where they clearly sort of see him as someone who can instill motivation in them. And as I've said before, there's a whole host of reasons why that's sort of outrageous from the players, that it's like, oh, he's worthy of my time and attention. You fans who are going through this shit, well, you're not really worth it. But now we've got a manager who's worthy of our talent, will actually play. So that remains to be seen if that's going to happen. But that does look quite positive that they seem to be engaged in this. So will we get a new manager bounce? I really hope so. It does seem like there's now a sort of renewed energy around the club. And I wonder if that is, one, because we do have a new manager, a new figurehead of the football inside. And also, I wonder if it sort of feels like a new era. Like De Zerbi is more in line from a footballing perspective with what Spurs should be trying to do. He does have the respect from a footballing perspective from players and his contemporaries. So if he can install this sort of attitude and we can start picking up performances and stay up, then it gives me a lot more hope for the future. And so I think there's just a level of like optimism around the fact that we've managed to get him and that this could really push us forward, which I think is really exciting. Plus it looks like Kudus is coming back, or is at least close to returning, which I think for any manager, but particular for De Zerbi, that could be huge for him. So I'm kind of really excited to see how he uses these players. And I know I'll get to your questions today because we had some really good ones. So I'll go through all of those at the end as usual. But, I do think that's going to be interesting to see how he lines up. And this is kind of part of the fun of this moment with a new manager, isn't it? It's like the beginning of the process when it's all unknown, it's all optimistic, it's all exciting. This is kind of the best bit. And especially if you can start to see green shoots quite early on. And so the Sunderland game, prime example, then it gives you something to get excited about. We're obviously in this real dire situation of relegation looming over us. But if we just got a result and we played, not even the whole game, but we just, in moments, we looked like we had cut teams open, I think that will really sort of bring that energy to the club, which is exciting. So yeah, it definitely seems like the players are buying in. Arms around the shoulder of Archie Gray, arms around the shoulder of Bergvall, etc. Definitely seem like he's got certainly even if it's just for the cameras, they obviously have focused on that. So it seems like there's some attention there, which makes sense to me because I sort of feel like the midfield in this system could be, if it's a midfield three, it could be just Gray, Bergvall and Simmons, right? That could work in my mind in the way that this system operates. Or you could even have Gray, Bergvall and Sarr, because, a lot of it is about transition. And I know a lot of it's about moving the ball quickly. And there's questions about, technical ability to be able to move it quickly. But I feel like Sarr, Gray and Bergvall all can move it quickly. Yes, they can carry as well. But in an automation set where you don't have to think so much about where it's going to and you've got more options, they are, I think, technically talented enough to move the ball quickly, but they can also move physically quick up the pitch. and on transition and on breakaways, I do feel like that could be useful as well. And this is what I mean. It sort of reopens up the way we think about things. You don't have to think, well, who's going to be the 6 and who's going to... It's like he plays a different kind of way. And so this could be quite interesting to see what happens there. I'm still none the wiser as to how Xavi Simons fits into this, if I'm honest. I feel like he could be part of that 3, but I definitely see a world where he isn't. And actually that they go for, someone else, maybe even like Solanke as your out-and-out striker, and like someone like Gallagher or even Bergvall, like off of him. Someone more robust, someone more able to do that. I don't really know, right? And I'm not going to pretend to be a sort of expert on De Zerbi's systems, but just from what I'm hearing from other people, it feels like it might not be as simple as like, oh yeah, it's going to be a lot more 1 and 2 touch, therefore Xavi Simons. One of my main complaints about him is he holds on to the ball too long, and he wants to look at passes for too long instead of making calls. And then when he does pass, often he's like, either it's his concentration level or I don't know what it is, but he doesn't seem to complete passes that he should be able to based on his talent level. So I don't know what happens with him, but I am excited to see what he can get out of the players that we have and the players that are coming back. So that will certainly be interesting. My next sort of thought here was around like identity, and is it sort of too soon? I don't really care about the identity bit just yet. I know that will come, given a bit of time, if you can get De Zerbi on the training pitch with these players. If we stay up, obviously we'll have, the sort of pre-season to get them really drilled into this. So for me, it's not, like I said, the identity, I don't think in its like entirety will be there before the end of the season. Maybe we might start to see it, but I think that's okay. I think it's about creating sort of a platform and environment for these players to perform better than they have done, to get the most out of the remaining games and get some wins, which is ultimately what we need. And so I feel like as long as he's not trying to overcomplicate it and make the be-all and end-all, you've got to play my exact system. If it's like an adapted version, I'm completely fine with that, and I think that will ultimately be pretty useful for us. So yeah, this does have the feeling, despite the fact that we only have a handful of games left, this does have this feeling of sort of a fresh start, I guess, a sort of fresh era to Spurs. I personally, and I can't speak for others, as always, this podcast is just my thoughts and my opinions. I do feel more optimistic, and I don't think I said that last week. I think I felt like concerned that he can't do it quick enough. And actually, as I said, as the closer this Sunderland game gets, the more I'm thinking, well, no, like maybe he can, right? Maybe what I've been saying before, which is like, you just need someone to like reinstall some confidence and to a certain extent put an arm around some of these players, right? That seems like what he's doing, right? He seems like he's going to just install some confidence and make them realize how good they can be. And there's this constant, this carrot of, well, let's stay up, because if we do, and I'm in charge, we can really make something special here. And if we go down, guess what? I'm still in charge, and I'm going to bomb people off. And if we stay up and you're rubbish, you're going to get bombed. So either way, do you want to like be part of this? Because I'm part of this, I'm bought into this, and I really want to see this working. And so by luck or judgment, Vinay and Langer have, I think, put us in a better situation than we were when we had Tudor, and certainly where we were when we had Frank, because I do feel like De Zerbi's football is much more in line with what we're trying to do. That's a definite tick in the box. I do actually also think that giving him more power on transfers, etc., whilst it's not in vogue as like that's the way you do it, given that we don't have really a great track record in recent years of director of footballs, sort of positions performing particularly well, I'm all right with that. As I think I've said it here before, like, I don't really care for the director of football idea. Like, I think it's fine and it certainly works for other clubs, but I think that the idea that that's the only way that football clubs can run, I just don't agree with that. The manager, or now the head coach, if you're a manager and you really see like a project, you do have an idea of like what you need and what you who you need to sign. And yeah, you might need a team of people or someone in a position to sort of manage the deals and manage the sort of scouting and managing that network. I understand that. And if that's a director of football type position, then fine. But I guess what I mean is like the manager should be setting the football strategy. Like they are literally the person who is working with the team, who knows what the team needs. And, you know, I understand that the game's moved on and the game's changed and, you know, that there's this, you know, so much more data driven. I get all of that. But I do think that these two things should be working close together, and that you have a manager who's got a vision for what he wants and you provide him with options as close to the vision as possible. If he's got a real idea of a player that he really sees something in that he thinks can do it, it needs to be a collaboration at least with those people. And ideally, you know, you should find a way to give the manager what he thinks he needs. Because ultimately, I think it's become really difficult to judge managers when they're not able to control the playing side ultimately, right? Which is why we've had so many issues with managers like blowing up or failing. Like you're telling me like Conte wasn't a good manager when he was our manager. No, he wanted certain players and we didn't get them. So he was being judged on something he wasn't in control of because he wouldn't have picked those players. And so whilst, you know, he was a bit of a twat as well in the end, he did have a point, right? He did have a point, which is like, you're judging me on results based on an outcome that I think would have been different had we have done what I suggested, but you didn't listen to me. You've done your own thing, and now we've got the shit outcome, and I'm the one who's going to bear the brunt of that. I do understand that, and I think that's like why managers have struggled and why we've been frustrated with managers ultimately. Okay, so what else have I got here? Let's have a look. So yeah, we had in fact, let me just check because some of these questions are in my running order, which you guys very kindly asked me. So let me have a look. THFC 1882, THFC American. Hello, mate. Am I too late? You're not too late because I'm reading it out now. So you got it in time. Will we actually get a new manager bounce? Were we robbed with Igor? Well, yeah, we definitely didn't get a new manager bounce with Igor Tudor, bless him. And I'm hoping this time we will. I mean, I feel like most teams, quote unquote, get a new manager bounce, but statistically, I don't think that's true. But if we've not had one with the last one, maybe this time we will. And I feel like there's a different level of optimism. It's sort of, with Igor Tudor, it was sort of a bit clouded in why is this going to work? Why are we picking this guy? Whereas De Zerbi, it feels much more like, oh, well, we know who he is. We know how good his football can be. How quickly can he adapt to this? The players are buzzing. Everyone's buzzing. It does seem a little bit different, which I think is really interesting. Let me have a look. What else did we get in here? We had questions about players that I wanted to answer. Spurs Simpsons. Hello, mate. Papa Sarr. Where do you stand on him? He seems to have stalled progress-wise in the last 18 months. Well, I think this is a really interesting one because I agree. I mean, I love him. I think he's got a lot of potential, but he hasn't been good. And it's a weird one because typically when he plays, I feel like we play better. But his individual performances have been a little bit hit and miss, like most of the squad. I think it's a really interesting one. I completely understand the argument of De Zerbi wants technical players. He's more of a sort of rangy runner, energy type. But again, like a lot of the players, or a lot of the sort of way I've seen them play is like, yeah, okay, it's 1-on-2 touch, move it quick, move it simple. But you still have to move up the pitch. And I think he can offer a lot there. And so I do think like between those three, Gray, Bergvall, Sarr, I do think like they can all offer something. And it'll be really interesting to see how he's deployed and what his first lineup is going to be, because I do think that's a real interesting one. So yeah, let's see. Who might struggle in this system? Well, there's been again a lot of chat about Vicario versus Kinski. Vicario is not going to be fit, probably, I think, for Sunderland, which means Kinski in all likelihood starts. I think that could be good. I know he had a nightmare against Atletico. I sort of feel like this is the perfect way to bounce back. He is typically good with his feet. He is very good short passing, medium passing. So I do feel like this could be good. Get him in, rebuild his confidence, and it could be really useful for us. Longer term, I do think we need a serious replacement. And I know there's been some talk about getting in a different manager. I mean, Mike, I don't know how you pronounce that. It's Mike Atrac. Atarekti. Archtarekti. Mike, can you just tell me how I pronounce your name? Because it can't be Aktarekti. It could be that. Mike Aktarekti. Anyway, Mike Atrac, what keeper do you want to come in with the word that Vic is leaving in the summer? Well, again, I am not an expert on like goalkeepers. I know we've been linked with that James Trafford. Again, looks like he could potentially be good. But yeah, we have to prioritise that, I think, in the summer. Is like a decent ball-playing keeper who's like a more experienced and ready to go than Kinski. Because, yeah, I think we need that like real top quality. So that will be super interesting to see what happens there. All right, let's get into the Sunderland game. Because I do think like this is where it's going to get really interesting. They've been decent, haven't they? Let's be fair. Oh, what is this now? Oh, this is I've accidentally. Hang on.
Back again. They 19th to 14th. I thought everyone has gone mad. I said everyone has gone mad.
So I accidentally clicked my phone, and it's Al Pacino doing a British accent. It's so horrendous. So sorry about that. Just adds another layer. That's what I do on here. We just go off in tangents. 1 minute I'm talking about the Sunderland game. The next minute it's Al Pacino's British accent murdered on Twitter. This is what you get for trying to do two things at once as a man. I can't multitask. I literally cannot multitask. Okay, Sunderland. So does he go bold or does he keep it simple? I think basically keeping it simple is kind of going bold because we've had so much like flip-flopping and changing things around that I just sort of think like De Zerbi hopefully is going to have a very clear picture of like who he likes and what he's got. He's had a good few days on the training ground, which is good, and like sort of around the players, a chance to sort of get to know them up close and personal. So it will be really interesting to see what he does. I think that, 4-2-3-1 hopefully is like what we're going to see. It would be great if Kudus is back. If he isn't, then again that will be an interesting like selection. I hope that we just see a doggy. I would go Danso Romero, but I think he'll probably go Van der Ven Romero. Porro as your back four, Kinski in goal. And then I think that's as far as I get. I'd maybe say Solanke is like nailed on to be the starting striker. But then after that, it's like Bergvall, Gray, maybe as the 2. Simmons maybe as the 10. If Kudus is fit, Kudus on the right, but it might be a bit early for him. Tell on the left, maybe. Don't know. This is what's going to be really exciting, and we're going to have to kind of wait and see. But yeah, this has definitely sort of built my excitement for this game more than I've had previously. So yeah, I think that's going to be interesting. And when it comes to the game itself, I feel like we're going to win. And I know that they've got some quite, they've been quite good this season and their home form's been pretty decent. But I just feel like we are going to get a new manager bounce. We are going to get a performance out of the players. Maybe not a perfect one, right? Maybe this is a scrappy 2-1. But I do feel like we might get a win here. And we need it, right? Like we can't just keep trying to identify games and go, well, Sunderland away, that's a bit hard. No, we have to beat them. Like we sort of have to get these wins early because the pressure only builds more and more for us. So yeah, we absolutely need this win. And I think that we're going to get it. I would go a scrappy 2-1. But I am actually, for the first time in a long time, I am really looking forward to watching us. I think mainly it's like the intrigue. It's a manager who plays good football again. So I'm kind of optimistic and keen to see how this one goes. Right, let me get into your questions. But before I do that, I just want to say, like, aside from having good weather here, it was also fantastic to see Arsenal just completely bottle it again. That's now like 2 cups they've bottled in like a week. It's tremendous, and it's amazing and also quite sad how much it does improve my mood, because I've just been buzzing about that. And I know we're potentially going to go down and we're absolute garbage. I get that. But if they just keep bottling stuff, it's really funny. So that has definitely helped me, and long may that continue. The sooner they go out of the Champions League, that will help. And if City can get back into the title race in a meaningful way, that will also be tremendous. So let's see what happens. Right, let me answer the rest of your questions, because we had lots of questions there. Okay, if we avoid relegation, which one player, being realistic, not Yamal, for example, would you like the club to go all out to sign to improve us? That's absolute shambles on Twitter. It's a good question. I mean, I feel like there's a couple of sort of key positions for me. I feel like we need a starting left winger. Like, I feel like Tell and Odebear and those guys like are decent prospects. And I feel like on the other side, like Kudus is great, and Kulusevski, if he ever comes back, will obviously, sort of play that side. So we need a sort of Kudus level player on the other side. And I wanted us to sign Grealish on loan, because I think that would have been perfect for this season. But he's now, I think, moved out of that bracket where that becomes like makes any sense. But that's who we should have got. We need that sort of a right-footed, left-sided player who sort of cuts in and is a proper replacement for Son. I don't know who that is, so I can't give you names, but I feel like that position is crucial, because if you had Solanke, Kudus, and a prime Son, suddenly you're like, okay, this is actually like pretty decent. So that is definitely one position. I also think like we clearly need more technically gifted players in the midfield. Like I'm talking about Bergvall and Gray. Like, who's the 26-year-old Bergvall and Gray? Because that's what we need, like, really now. These two should be rotation options. They shouldn't be, like, starting every week. And then, I do think we need fullback options, like proper ones. You can't just have Spence playing both sides of cover. Like, we need a proper, decent, sexy left fullback rotation, and then Spence can be the cover on the right-hand side and also cover both. Jeremy Kinsella, have we missed Bentancur more than people think? He gets a hard time, but he's a skillful player, can hold on to the ball. It's like people forgot Conte Bentancur. Well, yes, I do think that he is a technically gifted player, but I do think he's not the same Bentancur that we saw under Conte, and that's part of the issue. And it's not his fault, right? If you get injuries as serious as his, it's clearly going to affect you, and you're not going to be the same player when you return. But yeah, like if he becomes a useful option and he can fit into De Zerbi's way of playing, and I think that a player who thrived under Conte is likely to do well under De Zerbi, not because they're exactly the same, but because some of the similarities of the sort of automation style, that type of approach could work potentially. Johnny Be Good 1365. What was your favourite pre/post-match snack back in the day? Is it the same now? So it's definitely not the same now, because I'm trying to be more healthy as I get older. But it would have definitely have been some sort of like pie. I'd have had like a pint and a pie. And you throw in a couple of like little 12 bites, and then you really are talking there. Whereas now it'd be like a bottle of water, which is so pathetic, I know. But yeah, I'm just trying to be a bit more healthy these days. It's not really working, because I'll occasionally just go out and drink like 20 pints like a geezer and eat shit for a weekend. So, what are you going to do? MJB Hotspur, we need to remember who we are, was a standout quote from De Zerbi's interview. Do you want De Zerbi to try and play his way immediately, or does he need to adapt to grind out some wins? Well, as I said, I think he will sort of up the De Zerbi-ness of De Zerbi ball, right? It's going to start with De Zerbi ball 101, or, basic level, and then move it to intermediate, and then, next season it will go to expert level. So I think there'll be a slow adaptation and rise into what we're trying to do, rather than just like a full bang, here's the De Zerbi full way of playing. I think it will be a gradual evolution. Mount 44, Cake Mount 678. Paolo Maldini, a sporting director, won AC Milan's first Scudetto in 10 years on a limited budget before being sacked by their American owner. They also got to the 2023 Champions League semi-finals with this squad. Imagine the doors that would open having him as sporting director. Is he available? Because if he is, and, De Zerbi's into it, I'd love that. I love Paolo Maldini. Like, what a player. What a player. For those of you too young to remember him, just ridiculous, like just so good. Like now, there's a lot of like sort of centre backs who basically play as fullback, and everyone's like, "Oh, this is a modern way." And that's what Paolo Maldini was. Paolo Maldini would have been the best centre back in the world if he wasn't like playing with like Baresi and like all these boys and Nesta and stuff. So he was like, "Well, I'll just play left back then. Should be the best left back. Don't worry about it." Like. He was amazing at left back, but he was also really good. If he ever needed to play centre back, he was incredible. Amazing one-on-one defender, great on the ball, strong in the tackle, didn't have to dive in, would always stay on his feet. Just what a player. So yeah, if you could get Maldini as sporting director, sure, I'm into it. I don't know anything about sporting directors, but yeah, if he wants to do that. Ottawa Spurs, Canada. What do you think is his first team lineup? I kind of went through that. I think it's really difficult to predict. I don't often love predicting lineups because I just sort of think like either nobody really knows like now, so it's kind of meaningless, or we do know because, we know what it's going to be. So, yeah, as I said before, I sort of think it'll be like Kinski, Porro, Romero, Van der Ven, and Udogie. And then I think it'll be Gray, Bergvall, probably Xavi Simons, Tell, Solanke, and maybe Kudus on the right if he's fit. Let's see. Piers McGlinchey. Hoping we can actually get a new manager bounce this time. What do you think these next 3 games will be? Do you think these next 3 games will be the best chance to finally get a win this year? Maybe even back-to-back? Yes, that's the energy. Yes, I do. I think this is going to be the new manager bounce we all need. Get a couple of back-to-back wins and we'll all be feeling loads better about things and we shoot up the table. That's the ideal scenario. That would be fantastic. And then we had one last comment from Ole Andreas Olsen. I will set XG at 8 today. Try to guess the starting lineup versus Sunderland, please. I've given that a go a few times. We actually had one last question, probably my favourite of the day. Bob, 91343587. I just come up with that, Bob. What's your fastest ever go-karting lap? Honestly, I think I've actually only ever been go-karting once. It's not really befitting of a man of my stature, a go-kart. I'm too big, way too big for a go-kart. It's mental. And also, I look like Bowser from Mario Kart. Like just too big. My elbows are out wide and all that. Ridiculous. And also, I'm quite a scaredy cat with that kind of stuff. So, like, I'm not, when I'm driving on the roads, I'm quite sensible, speed limit kind of guy. I like to keep my lane discipline and signal early and all that. So I'm not fit for racing. It's just I'm not really a sport that I think I'm particularly cut out for. So, yeah, just no need for that. Just a reminder for those of you who didn't listen a few weeks ago, Streamzy is my app. It's just a little side project to do with a friend. It's basically an app, and I know some people commented, well, this sort of stuff already exists. Yes, I know, there's other apps are available. But basically, it's like if you're looking for something on streaming services, you can use Streamzy, search for it, and it'll tell you exactly where it is. And then you can add it to a little list, and you can make a little to-do list. So nice and easy. So yeah, if you haven't downloaded that, go and download Streamzy. It's available on app stores everywhere. All right. I think that's enough for this week. Please like, rate and review if you've enjoyed this episode, and make sure you subscribe. If you listen and don't subscribe, please do that. And yeah, I'll look forward to speaking to you all very, very soon. Until next time, peace.